Okay, welcome everybody. Hope the opening session went well for folks. And you are now in one of our current breakouts on the ladder of engagement, which is all about developing leaders and bringing new people into the fold. So this session is going to go until roughly the top of the hour, whatever that is your time. It's about 50 to 55 minute long session. And then there's a couple other options from there, which you'll see back in that lobby space or under the sessions tab. So yeah, really happy to be with you all tonight. So yeah, I know a lot of people have been asking this. Maybe it's getting old, or maybe we're all just doing a great job with adult learning practices. Would love to hear one thing that folks have learned or taken away from the past 2 days. We're on the third night of the convention. I am astounded by the energy that folks have been bringing to this. Attendees, speakers, all of us making meaning together, whether that's in the chat or in smaller conversations. So if you want to take a minute right now to think about, like, is there anything that you want to hold on to coming back from the past 2 days? We'll see how that resonates. I'm just going to give a little moment of pause here for folks to think on that. Getting people to care and getting care to people. Beautiful piece. Oh, Nina, that's for a little bit of a moment from now. And actually, that reminds me, just want to give a shout out to Nina and Judy, who are going to be helping out in the chat and saving questions for later on. So actually, yeah, let me just state that one more time really clearly. So we've got a couple of folks who are helping out in the chat tonight. They're going to be dropping a couple of prompts, question prompts, as well as a couple of links here and there. They will also be saving questions for later on. We will probably have a little bit of time for Q&A and just general debriefing, processing together about this training content at the end. We'll play it a little bit by ear, depending on time. So beautiful. Thanks everybody for sharing that in the chat. I hope that's as useful for you as it is for the other people who see it. And let's get into it. So for our agenda for this particular session, we're kind of in the intro space right now, a little bit of space norms, a little bit of reflection on where we're coming from. What we're going to cover next is an overall framework for thinking about leadership development and this metaphor of the ladder of engagement. Sarah, my co-facilitator, is going to take you into the building blocks of one-on-ones and direct asks. And we'll also touch on just a few final pieces around social community, mentorship, and absorption, kind of the glue that holds it all together. Before we do that, though, let's just make sure we have some quick introductions. Sarah, do you want to come off mute and just say hello real quick so people have seen your face and heard your voice?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Marino, excited to be with you all here for this third and final night. I am the Director of Network Support and have been with Indivisible for many years now, so it's wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces here.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm also just going to shout out Sarah. Sarah stepped in today, literally, because one of our beloved staff members is out sick. So she's really coming in on the clutch here. So thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate you being here with us. So, and my name is Nora Sharp. I work on Indivisible's trainings team. May have been in a space with some of y'all before. You may have even seen me wearing this exact same. This is I'm doing an important Indivisible event collared shirt. So I was, of course, wearing it last night as well for the panel. So great to see familiar names in the chat. And actually, I am going to pause on the screen share real quick because I actually want to start us off tonight with just a quick story about just like what the topic that we're covering tonight sort of personally means to me, and ask if some of y'all relate to it. So as I'm sure is true for many of us, I've been in various kinds of organizing spaces for much of my life. I came up in like student environmental organizing. I've done some electoral work. And over the years, I've actually noticed that as much like passion as I feel and commitment as I feel, it somehow can be really easy to like enter into a movement space or an organization and then kind of just drift away or sign up for an email list and then never go somewhere after that, or maybe show up for the rally, but not actually feel like I'm connected to the people who are holding that rally, something like that. But by contrast, one experience in my own just like personal volunteer life that I do outside of my work at Indivisible that stands in contrast to that was a couple of years ago, 2018 to 2019, when I was volunteering on a city council campaign in Chicago, which is my hometown, for a candidate named Rosana Rodriguez Sanchez, who went on to become one of the 5 socialist city council members in Chicago, really strongly holding up the progressive left in what is thought of as a democratic blue city, but actually still holds quite a bit of ideological variance within that. And I just started canvassing for Rosanna because I thought she was great. I didn't even live in her ward. I was just excited about it. And before I knew it, somehow I was being woven in more closely. It was like one day they said, hey, can you come early before the canvass? We're shooting a volunteer recruitment video and we'd love to have your voice be part of it. Or like, hey, we need a couple more folks to just like greet some of the new folks. We have new people showing up to canvass this time. Could you be there for that? When election day came, they were like, will you come to the 6 a.m. shift outside a polling place so that you can give out our lit to the voters? And then when the race went to runoff, they were like, will you keep coming back to our later canvases and will you do another 6 a.m. shift, for the runoff election day? And so just these little asks along the way, like when Rosanna finally won by 13 votes, like not only was every door that I knocked something that I could feel was so crucial, but all those little pieces along the way, I just remember being at like the celebration parties of the other larger social events and feeling like I was part of something. And that is honestly what the ladder of engagement is all about. I'm going to go ahead and pull up these slides one more time, but that's, at least for me, why this topic matters so much and why I'm excited to be learning about it with you all and trying to figure out how do we manage this world in which we need to build movements, we need to develop leaders, and somehow we have to do it all amidst all the other parts of our lives that are not the organizing work. So yeah, let's get into it. I want to start by just giving a definition of leadership development. So we've named some of the terms we're talking about tonight. The definition we're going to go with for this evening is that leadership development is an intentional process of growing the strengths, skills, capacity, and knowledge of individuals in a movement organization. And it's a crucial part of all social change movements because the scale of change that we need can only be accomplished by many people working together, which means each one of us needs to find our place so we can contribute to a greater whole. Okay, but also I just kind of like made that up through cobbling things together and thinking about things and talking to other people like a week or two ago. I'm not saying it's not a good definition, but I do want to hear if you think of something else when you think of leadership development, if there's like a different way that you understand it or something you think is missing from this, I would love if people could throw that in the chat, just because I feel like this is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot and means a lot of different things. And it's just helpful to name that so that if we're trying to be specific, we kind of know the range of options that we might need to define and hone in from. So feel free to throw any other definitions or interpretations of that term in the chat. And something that might show up in the chat, I don't know, we'll see what happens, is that I feel like a lot of the time when people talk about the term leadership or the concept of leadership development, it can seem like it means something like fancy titles or like a promotion at a job, maybe being in charge of stuff, maybe making decisions, or like even just having a designated role, like I am the such and such. I think of like, I don't know, like grade school and middle school, maybe just in that mindset from my comments earlier this evening, but like, being class president or class treasurer, that's what it means to be a leader, something like that. Maybe it's something that only happens for a select few people, or it's tied to high stakes or high visibility responsibilities, something like that. Just kind of a cultural concept around this that seems like it's floating in the water sometimes. So what Sarah and I kind of want to offer tonight is a bit of a reframe in that it can be helpful to shift thinking about leadership and leadership development to something that is for all of us on an ongoing basis. Anytime that we or the people that we're working with have an opportunity to grow in ways that match our strengths, match our interests, or increase our skills, our capacity, our knowledge. So really a shift from something that's special and rare and designated by certain kinds of power, decision-making, or designation. It could look like that at times, but something that can really be for all of us and is about growth in connection with where we're at and our current interests and strengths. A phrase you'll hear us mention a couple times tonight, ABDL, we should always be developing leaders. So anybody who shows up and takes action in our movement is contributing to our whole. And when we think of leadership development as investing in people's growth and skills and capacity and knowledge, rather than just like, are you the class treasurer, or are you the class secretary, or are you the social media manager? It becomes something we can do whether somebody is, just liking a post or joining a mailing list, or whether they're leading a march. Even those people leading the march need leadership development. And even those folks who are liking the post or signing up for the email list have leadership potential and need for development as well. So let's get a little more concrete here. How are we going to do it? The 5 parts of leadership development and bringing people into the fold that we're going to highlight for the rest of this session are building out your ladder of engagement, which I'll define in just a second, having one-on-ones, making direct asks. Sarah's going to cover each of those in depth, investing in social community, and making it someone's job through absorption and mentorship. I don't know why I said that Sarah was talking about the direct asks and the one-on-ones, because actually she's covering the majority of that second half. Once again, shout out to co-facilitators. So let me talk a little bit about this concept of the ladder of engagement. It's an imperfect metaphor because it implies that you should always be climbing it, or that the goal is to move up. All metaphors are imperfect. That's what's imperfect about the ladder of engagement, but we're still going to go with it for now, imperfect as it might be. So somewhere toward the lower rungs of the ladder, we have things like joining a Facebook group or signing up for an email list, some of those examples I used earlier, maybe resharing a social media post or posting on Twitter or Facebook, something like that. Maybe a little further up on a higher rung of the ladder, we have things like attending a meeting, contacting your member of Congress, signing up to write postcards or actually writing some of those postcards. We keep moving up the ladder, we have things like phone banking or canvassing, inviting others to phone bank or canvas, attending a rally or an action, maybe writing a letter to the editor, maybe making a donation for some people. And then we begin to move into things that are a little bit more like roles or kind of structured responsibilities that help manage and run the group, creating a meeting agenda or co-facilitating a meeting, training other volunteers, supporting like less convenient or maybe more vulnerable or higher risk direct voter contact or actions. And then we've got things like leading working groups, managing direct voter contact events, planning actions and rallies. And of course, these examples that I've thrown on the slide are incomplete. I know that folks here are at so many different levels of experience or level of commitment in your groups. I'm sure there's many of you all who do so much more, either in terms of level of intensity and commitment, or just so much more that's not listed on these slides. These are just a couple of examples. But one thing I want to pull out is that all of these levels matter and all of them are part of a strong movement. Okay, so part of what's imperfect about this metaphor, even that we're using it, is that it implies that some of those actions on the lower rungs like aren't as important, or that the goal is to move away from them. They are important. They're part of how we have a rich ecosystem of activists and members who are repeating and reinforcing our message, like we talked about earlier on in this convention, and taking each of those small actions as well. Of course, there are certain higher level commitments that we need people to fill as well, but we just really want to emphasize all the levels. It's like the phrase from The Wire, like all the pieces matter, all the levels matter and are part of a strong movement. So I want to look at this a little differently as well, not just in terms of the examples, but kind of what they signify. So some of those like LITE, lightest lifts on the lower rungs generally require minimal time, minimal like prior relationships or related information. Then as you move up the ladder, like kind of a light lift, calling your member of Congress, something like that, does require a little bit more time or information or resources, but maybe is less likely for some people to be intimidating or perhaps emotionally difficult. Not to say for sure, it varies for everybody. You keep going up the ladder, those medium lifts, like showing up to Canvas, showing up to Phone Bank, going to the rally, writing a letter to the editor, they do take more significant time, information, and resources, but not necessarily like ongoing commitment where you are saying, I'm going to keep showing up. Whereas we keep moving up from there, those medium to heavy lift ones do require like ongoing commitment in addition to the time and information and resources that some of the other lifts do. And then at kind of the highest rung of the ladder, some of the heavier lift actions require significant ongoing commitment and knowledge. So a couple things I just want to caveat about this. We're painting it out this way in order to try to just get concrete about if we wanted to have a nice built out ladder of engagement to bring to do leadership development and bring new leaders along, it's helpful to have all of this. And there's a quick activity about that in a moment. But just to really state, like, if we look at this slide, some of the words that show up a lot are like time, resources, information, okay? And as we know, not everyone has equal access to those things or experiences them in the same way. So actually, even the language I'm using here of like a lift maybe is not totally appropriate, because what might be a heavy lift for somebody is a lighter lift for somebody else. So again, this is not to privilege certain levels of engagement over others. As we know, all the levels matter, all the pieces matter in building a strong movement. But this is going to take us into our first kind of independent activity. So as we're going into that, yeah, this is my slide where I'm just repeating myself a little bit too much. We don't have to move everyone up the ladder. We need and value folks at all levels of engagement, but it's also worth having action and role options at many levels of engagement so that we can develop leaders when they're ready, but also meet them where they're at. So you don't have to just jump from the lower ring to the top rung. Okay, so I'm going to switch over part of my slide here, and this would be a great time if our chat moderators could send out the link to the handout. So now and then going into the rest of the session, we're going to be using a handout that folks will just use independently to plan some next steps and track what you're taking away from this session. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. I hope that won't be too strange. Yeah, that should be okay. So this link is in the chat. If you're having any trouble with it, just stay with me on the Zoom screen. The first thing you'll see is a couple of directions about how to use this document. So when you're looking at it, it's going to be in view only mode, but you can click the file menu and then go to make a copy. And that will give you your own copy that you can type into yourself and take notes here. There's a screenshot of that here where I'm showing on the slide, or on the slide currently, on the screen share currently. So if that's not working to make a copy and take notes on the document, that's totally fine. You could maybe write your answers on paper. You could use like a notes app on your phone, or maybe Microsoft Word or another word processing app on whatever device you're using, whatever works best for you. But the section we're going to do right now is kind of a quick self-assessment or group assessment about your group's ladder of engagement. So the question is, what kinds of actions or roles does your group have available to existing or new members at different levels of engagement? And there's space on this sheet to think through using the language that was on those slides, these kind of light to heavier lifts. Again, granted, the lightness or the heaviness is subjective and going to be different for everybody, but just to think through examples of, are there simple things that require minimal time, energy, and resources? Are there kind of medium level things? What are the higher level responsibilities? And you're going to see a question at the end that offers you a chance to consider, where are the areas where you most need to build out your ladder of engagement, the places where there are gaps, missing rungs on the ladder. Pretty unsafe ladder if there's missing rungs, actually. And then if any ideas come to mind of what actions or roles could fill in the areas that you need to most build out, this could also be a great thing to discuss with fellow leaders or members after the convention is over. All right, so we're going to take, I always put it as like one song's worth of time for this, so probably about 4 to 5 minutes. This is independent time to go through these questions. I'll leave this document up on the screen so that you can stay with me if for any reason you're struggling to use it or just not able to create a copy yourself. I'll check the chat in a moment to catch up there, and otherwise we will see you back here in just a couple minutes. Okay, so I had checked in the chat real quick if anybody needed more time. Nobody chimed in, so we're just going to keep it moving. But we'll spread out our time with any extra we have a little bit later on. But Sarah, I believe I am passing it over to you to talk a little bit about the how of this stuff.
Great, thank you, Nora, and hello again, everyone. So now that we're all familiar with what the ladder of engagement is, you've done some of your worksheet figuring out if there's some rungs to fill in. Now we're going to talk about how we actually move people up it. And specifically, we're going to go through a few tools to do this. And those things are one-on-ones, direct asks, building your social community, and a little tip at the end, we'll talk about how you can make this someone's job to be thinking about this. So we'll go through these 4 items in depth with some worksheet breaks throughout the way, and we'll talk about what they mean and how to do them. I do also want to say I see a lot of Indivisible leaders who have been doing this work for quite a while. So many of you have likely used some of these tactics before or thought about using them. So if this is familiar content, I'd suggest just taking this as a good refresher and reminder. I know sometimes going into organizing basics is just a really helpful grounding for me to think about it and remind me of the tools at our disposal. I also want to do another caveat and note that I know it's sometimes tough to prioritize this community building when there's so much going on and find time in your schedules for one-on-ones and building community. And I hear and understand the very real capacity challenges there, and also want to just encourage you to think about how to keep making space for this. One lesson that I really took to heart when someone said it to me a few years ago in organizing is that you need to go slow to go fast. So that is, you need to really take that time to slow down, invest in capacity building, maybe do a few less things for the short term so that you could eventually do even more. So with all that said, let's get into it and start by talking about one-on-ones. I know many folks here are likely familiar with the term one-on-one, but to start with a definition, a one-on-one is just what it sounds like. It's 2 people, or sometimes we have 2-on-ones as well. But in this case, a one-on-one is 2 people having a conversation, maybe over coffee or a bagel or some other tasty breakfast pastries. And that conversation helps build a relationship and helps support organizing goals. So I'm curious to see in the chat box, when is the last time that you did a one-on-one? I'm curious if it's recent, if it is not been for a while. Okay, Vicky had 3 today. All right. And Barbara says last week, 2 days ago, last month. I love this specificity, February 1st, 2019. That's great. So it seems like this is a tool that everyone is familiar with, some folks are using. And if you've never thought of the concept of a one-on-one before, that is also totally fine. Or if you haven't found the time to do it, also okay. So this could be a fresh start. So we'll go into now the actual content or the basic formula for every one-on-one. So the specific content of a one-on-one will vary quite a bit. It depends on who you're talking to. It depends on your personalities, your commonalities that you're connecting on, and what stage someone is at on the ladder of engagement. The actual content of the conversation may vary quite a bit. That said, every one-on-one does have a basic formula. So part 1, intention and interest. Have you all ever been in a meeting where 30 minutes in, you're sitting there and you're like, what is this meeting about? Why am I here? I hope that folks can't relate to this, but I do think many of us can relate to that. So we don't want that to happen in a one-on-one. Intention and interest is about stating why you're having this conversation, and also being upfront about why you're excited to talk to the person that you have asked to sit down to a one-on-one with. And I do see some chatter about Zoom, which definitely these can be, they can be phone calls, they can be on Zoom, they can be in person. So all of those apply. Part 2 of a one-on-one is exploration and processing challenges. So this is where your active listening really comes into play. I've heard it said that 70% of organizing is listening, and that may or may not be the exact percentage, but good listening is really key to organizing and specifically to relationship building. So this is the part in the one-on-one where you ask questions. Whether to get to know someone, you ask about their skills, you ask about what brings them to this work, and the conversation flows, and you can ask different follow-up questions depending on the direction. And this is also a chance to understand any concerns, whether that's hesitancy about getting involved, with a group, or committing more time, the direction of a specific event. It's not the place to fix things, but just to talk about it, get to the root of things. And then you'll move into part 3, which is movement alignment. So you've done all this great listening, and now it's time to connect the interests that came up in this conversation to the work that your group is doing. Do you have a big action coming up or an exciting new project? This is when you can talk about it and share how that connects with the interests that came up in exploration. Then part 4 is direct ask and closing. So as I said, every one-on-one will end with a direct ask, and we'll talk more about direct asks in a little bit. So here are 2 examples to show what this could look like, and how part 3 and 4, the movement alignment and direct ask, all really come together. So let's say I was the person you were having a one-on-one with. Chances are, if you asked me some good questions, if you were really doing a good job during exploration, it would come up at some point that the thing that got me started and interested in organizing was healthcare and protecting the Affordable Care Act, since I had a variety of complicated health issues when I was growing up. So that could then, through that exploration, through that movement alignment, that could lead you to ask me to join the healthcare subgroup if you had one in your group, or to join an event about abortion access that's coming up. On another example, let's say I shared that I had a skill, that I was really good at arts and crafts. This one is not true. Arts and crafts is one of my greatest weaknesses, and the other example was true. But hey, let's say I was really good at crafts. That could bring you to an ask about if I can help with or lead sign making for an upcoming event. So those are some ways you can make an ask, but an ask can also be just to continue the conversation, or to follow up in a few weeks, or to check in when someone is ready to get involved more. So there are tons of applications and types of one-on-ones, but those are some of the basic ingredients. So now we'll dig into that direct ask piece for a second. And we're not going to go through really how to make that ask, but instead we'll talk about the thing that most commonly holds people back from making asks, which is your mindset, and shifting your mindset and kind of rethinking reframing what it means to make an ask. So before we go into this, let me ask you all something, which is how many of you are here because someone asked you to be? Okay, I see some hands raised. And you can take that as here at the Indivisible convention, or here as an Indivisible leader. Yeah, getting in from Indivisible, that would count. So I think the moral here is that most of us are here because someone asked us something, whether to take on leadership of something, or simply to join this event. And because you're still here right now, I'm going to make the assumption that you're at least sometimes, hopefully usually, grateful that someone made that ask. So remember that when you're thinking about asking people something, that you're here because someone made the ask to you first. So we often think that making a direct ask of someone can be pushy. We don't want to make folks feel pressured, a hassle. If someone wants to sign up and saw it in an email, they would have. Unnecessary. We have all the hands on deck that we need, although I don't think I hear that from many people these days. Always could use more support. An afterthought. There's never enough time, energy, so this ends up being the last thing. But like Nora offered earlier, we want to offer a reframe of this. And making an ask can actually be generous. People want to feel a sense of purpose, as Nora shared earlier, when they were asked to show up at 6 a.m. That helps you feel connected and a sense of purpose. It is necessary. No one these days is always reading all their emails. So just assuming that someone read it in an email is not always the case. It's important to make those more direct asks. When you're feeling like it's unnecessary, it's important to always make sure that we are remembering this is how movements grow. Even if we don't feel like we need to be growing in the moment, it's still important that we're thinking about growth. And then finally, it's regenerative. Putting in more energy brings more back in the future. That point about going slow to then go fast in the future. So overall, don't hold someone back. Don't not make that ask because you're unsure if you should, because they'll definitely say no if they don't want to do something. So the worst you can do is ask and get that no. Again, the big point here is direct asks are a huge part of leadership development. And as we heard from Nora earlier, we want to always be developing leaders. And also, if you have a lot of new people in your group right now, this is especially crucial. You need to be intentional about bringing those new members in and retaining them, making room to bring new people in by using those one-on-ones and direct asks to move people up the ladder of engagement. So like Nora's story, when I first started with Indivisible, it was a fully volunteer run group in the really early days before we had staff. So I started off with some small tasks, and the team leads at the time realized I had an interest and more time to give. So they made a direct ask, then they made another one, and then another one. And those direct asks gave me increasing amounts of leadership, which felt really fun and exciting. And I felt really connected to the work. And if they hadn't made those asks, I likely would have drifted off and found other things to do with my time. So now we're going to go to the handout again. So Nora.
Yep, here we go, Sarah. Sorry for the second there. So this is the exact same document you were on before. If anybody needs the link or wants to try it again, we can throw it in the chat again. But what you're going to see is an invitation to set some goals around one-on-ones and direct asks. So there's a question for who are 5 people you can think of to hold one-on-ones with before the summer is out. See if you can maybe include both folks who have been around for a while and folks who are maybe a little bit newer to the group, if you have those. There's a prompt to ask if you can think of one person who you could ask to do the one-on-ones with you, maybe somebody who themselves is ready to move up the ladder of engagement and could hold one-on-ones as well. And then just some logistics, just because writing this stuff down can help ensure that we actually do it. By what point in the summer, like maybe the end of July, do you want to just have reached out to each of these people? What's the best method of communication for you personally to do so, or for your group members that you find, like phone, text, email? And a little bonus, if you move through all that super fast, just to do some reflection on successful experiences you've had in the past, either making a direct ask of someone else or someone making a direct ask of you. How could you recreate that feeling for future members or moments? So as before, I will keep the screen up, put on a little music, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes. All right, we'll let Bruce sing the rest of that song later. Sarah, let me pass it back to you. I know we got a little more content to get through tonight, so I'm gonna send it back to you.
I think it's a crime in New Jersey to cut off Bruce mid-song, but
oh, thank God I'm on the New York City border, not over there. Okay.
All right. Yes. So now we're gonna talk about the importance of social community and building your group community. So social community is the glue that holds it all together. While new folks come to Indivisible for an issue they care about or an action, as many of you know, they stay around for the community and the relationships. There are so many ways to build your community, creative events ideas, creative ways to engage with one another. And while it may sound somewhat trivial at first, to really prioritize creating events that are just fun, pure fun for your group, it's actually a really important part of the work of organizing. So we've seen Indivisible groups get really creative in the ways they're building community. This can be simple things like having regular meetings and including an icebreaker or time for socializing, before or after. You can think about doing small group things like setting up buddies or connecting group members with similar interests. There are also so many ways to have fun community building events. Some fun ideas that I was taking a look at, some events that have happened in the last year that I wanted to shout out. And I think some of the folks who did this may be on the line, but Indivisible Philadelphia hosted a Quizzo event that looked super fun. For those not from the Philly area, Quizzo is what they call bar trivia there. Indivisible Jack's Riverside did a fun lawn party with live music. Indivisible Andover had an event with snacks at a local brewery. Seeing a lot of events that groups have done supporting local businesses at local restaurants or in local parks. And of course, folks are thinking about different ways to have events either virtually or being really cautious about having outdoor events to make sure folks are safe and comfortable. Groups have done other social events, inviting partner organizations, going to local museums, watching movies together. I will throw another prompt out there and would love to hear if anyone has done anything creative recently, fun social events for your groups. And while you do that, I will quickly share a program that we have to support this, which is called Indivisible. And you can submit a reimbursement for up to $1,000 for your group for a community building event. So that is live through December 8th, and you can submit. Okay, I'm going to read off some of these ideas, which will hopefully be supportive for the work for the handout interlude we're about to go into. ID9 went to see Stacey Abrams, very cool. A birth control trivia at a burlesque bar in August. Let's see, Zoom Jeopardy, and I'm sure more things to come. So lots of fun ideas of things that groups are doing together. So now that we've had all these ideas, we're going to go to another handout break. And you can take a second to think about what is one social activity your group could do before the end of the summer.
Okay, Sarah, take it away for our last little bit here.
Great. And I'm seeing a lot of other great ideas in here. An August 16th event in San Diego, if anyone's in the San Diego area, January 6th, watch party with raffle tickets, upcoming picnic with a concert. Love it. So many great things there. So before we close out here to take some last questions, we have a final tip, which is that to make sure your group is really staying focused on this work, especially when other things come up, you can consider making it a dedicated role, specifically having someone or even a team, if you're a larger group, focused on absorption and mentorship. So to identify someone to do this, you can use the skills we talked about of direct asks and ask someone to take this role on in your group. They can be a point person who collects signups at events, does follow-up, or maybe pairs up as a buddy with new folks. And also make sure you have a way to always capture all those new signups that you get during meetings or at events. And if you don't have someone in mind, you can take on a long-term role, because I know it's not always feasible to delegate leadership when you're looking for new members or new leadership prospects. You can also just consider asking someone at each meeting to play this role, or at an event to make sure they're the point person for that event, that meeting, to sign new folks in and making them feel welcome. And who knows, if you have someone take this on one time or a couple times, maybe that will be something they can eventually commit to for the longer term. So I think that ends our different tools here that we were going through. So I'm going to hand it back over to Nora to help lead us through a little bit of Q&A and workshop review, worksheet review, that is.
Yeah, so we just got about 5 minutes here before we're going to take a break and then go into the final hour of tonight. And so now is just a great time. Judy and Nina, I know you all have been saving questions. I'm going to go look at that back end doc in a minute, but just want to call up everyone after what we've covered. First of all, if there's anything from the reflection and self-assessment and goal setting in your handout that you just wanted to share out or kind of debrief or process, it doesn't have to just be, questions, because we don't just have answers. Actually, a lot of time we don't have them, but we've got a few minutes here. So if folks want to comment in the chat, actually, I'm going to take down the screen share just so we can see each other a little bit. Put us on gallery view here. Yeah, if there's something you'd like to share or ask about, you can say so in the chat. And Nancy SL, it looks like you have your hand raised if you'd like to go ahead and come off mute with your question or comment or share.
I think I raised my hand because I don't know how to develop a strategy. You assume we know these things. I don't. I've never run a meeting in my life, and I wouldn't even know how to go about it. I'm basically an introvert. And that's just the start of my resistance to some of this. I need to talk one-on-one to an expert, only one person. I don't know who my organizer is. I only want an expert who is not necessarily my organizer.
Mm-hmm. Hey, thank you. I just really appreciate everything you just said. And I did actually take down your email already and jotted down some of the questions that need to be expressed. So we'll follow up for sure, just directly via email. I just would imagine, folks, feel free to raise your hand or say in the chat, but if you've ever felt like you don't even know how to do the first step of something, I think that's actually like a lot more common than it can feel like when we feel like we're the one who doesn't know the thing we're supposed to know to get started. So, I don't know, just want to offer back, Nancy, without conflating anybody's experience, that I think a lot of us have been in some version of that experience. And I just appreciate you like vulnerably stating that that's where you're at. So, okay, there's a lot that's been happening in the chat. Sarah, are you seeing anything that I was focused on what Nancy just shared, but I don't know if you've caught anything that you think would be good for us to focus on.
I just looked up that I see a couple of other introverts in the chat, and I too am an introvert and have learned that introverts actually often make some of the best organizers. No offense to the extroverts on this call, but did want to mention that. And I do see just a request to share successful event ideas just a lot about Introverts Unite. So.
I know there's a piece about the QR code. I feel like that would take us a little bit into technical weeds. Sarah, can we save that as something to include in what I know is going to be the vast follow-up email array? I feel like that should be simple directions that we can share. It is cool, and I think y'all would be able to use that rather than us talking about it right now. And maybe I'll just call on Shanna. I see you have the hand raised feature up. If there was something you wanted.
I just wanted to ask Nancy where she is. I thought maybe I recognized her from Arizona. Are you in Arizona, Nancy?
No, I'm from Massachusetts.
Oh, okay, never mind.
We've got a couple Nancys in the house, and I think there's another one who might be from Arizona. So Shanna, you might not be wrong. So, okay. So I think we're going to pause there for now. And just, appreciate you all. We'll see you back in the sessions to come. You can go back to the lobby space and to the sessions tab to find the next place you're going. And we just really appreciate you all being here with us tonight. Thank you so much.